Welcome to the Archangel's Feast podcast. For this conversation, I sat down with a friend of mine named Lisa. Lisa and I met at work, and I don't know how this got brought up, but we started talking about philosophy at one point, and we pretty quickly found we had a mutual interest. So that sparked some long conversations over work Skype, and eventually I just invited her on, and we're intending to talk about some assorted philosophical topics, but this kind of turned into a heart-to-heart about some of her life experiences as a Black woman, and we talked about kind of some specific instances of her life that she interpreted to be sexist or racist. We started off by talking a little bit about philosophy and the nature of memes, but then we kind of quickly transitioned into just her life experiences. And I've been thinking about whether this would be listed under my official channel podcasts or kind of the squadcasts. The difference, again, being the squadcasts are just kind of casual conversations with friends versus the channel podcasts, which I'm trying to get people with expertise in and then use the expertise as the launching pad for these conversations. And I do want to put this on the official channel podcast for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, she's an expert in her own life experiences, and that's what we talked about. But also because I think this was a pretty good example of a conversation where we're just trying to get to know each other better, and in a really respectful way, and also maintaining really different perspectives on the world. So I had a great time. She had a great time. We ended up talking for a half an hour after, which was not recorded, but hopefully you enjoy the long podcast that we did put together. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy. Oh, hello. Oh, we're on.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going.
Good to see you.
See you. How's your Sunday?
Sunday is nice and warm. It's gorgeous outside.
I know I haven't stepped foot out the house yet. I will do so, but not right now.
Yeah. How's we're in a pandemic. How's it going for you?
Well, you know what? The pandemic really hasn't affected me. In a way it has, because now I'm shouting at people to do the social distancing thing. I'm like, hey, I've been on second shift for 2 months to eliminate and minimize social contact. And then here you are, like within a hairbreadth away from me, breathing down my neck, and it's making me kind of anxious.
Me?
So, no, not you, but other coworkers. So I kind of like exploded this week because I am in a very small, tight queue, and everybody just kept coming in like it's a clown car. So I was just like, hello, we are still in a pandemic. Does everybody forgot social distancing? So, yeah.
Just like sardines in there.
It's been keeping it real, went very wrong that day. But I was just like beside myself, like, oh my God, I know I'm not going to get it. I know if I do the right thing and I maintain the distancing and I blah, 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 I won't get it. But you're not making it easy when you're breathing down my neck. So.
Right. How has it impacted your family at all, or people you know, or friends?
Oh my God, no. My aunt is a nurse, so she is sort of hyper vigilant about everything. She always was as a nurse, but now it's like ratcheted up 100 times, 1,000. Especially since she's the primary caregiver for my grandmother, who is like 96 years old. And every time you turn around, we're taking her to the ER. So my aunt is like, she works at Sloan Kettering, and she's been there for 22 years. So she is has transitioned into sort of like a caseworker or case manager as a nurse. So, but she still has to be there. And so she sees her coworkers dropping off left and right, like, oh, this one, she's not there anymore. That one's not there. And she was very, very surprised. And so was I when she told me that the hospital really wasn't all that vigilant. Sloan Kettering, a cancer hospital, was not all that vigilant about this whole COVID situation, and they really didn't take it seriously. And so the hospital was not prepared. So they're running out of PPE. And my aunt is like, oh my God, I can't believe this. We are supposed to be like the best cancer center in the country, and we were not prepared for this. What's wrong with us? You know?
Yeah, it's wild. I have a friend who's a nurse, and I think she's in Hartford or East Hartford maybe. And
Mm.
she said that one of her patients ended up getting COVID-19, and she had to get quarantined because they didn't have masks for her. Like they didn't give her any masks when she was working with them, and so they
Mm.
had to quarantine her for 2 weeks. And it was
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's crazy.
Connecticut did not do very well, did not prepare very well. And in addition to that, the good portion from what I've been reading here and there, a good portion of the deaths occurred inside the assistant care facilities and the nursing homes because they weren't really taking it all that seriously when it hit. So it's a game changer. This pandemic is a game changer. How we come out of it, whether we will be a better society or we will go completely off the rails, who knows? But
Yeah.
I'm kind of grateful for the change because I feel like the world needed a reset right now. Things were just getting more like escalating, and you could feel it. I mean, I felt it. I don't know about other people, but you just felt as though something big needed to happen in order for the whole entire world to reset, right?
Volcano's got to burst eventually, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny because at the time that I'm going back and forth on second shift, I'm listening to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Hmm.
which is the most absurdist but dopest philosophy written out there in that upper stip lip British kind of style, right?
Mm.
So I'm listening to this, and I'm like, you know what? If within the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Earth is considered an operational matrix that can produce the answer to what is the meaning of life, right? So it's this gigantic computer. That's what the Earth is. And we are operating within its operational matrix. Now we have a virus, this pandemic. The virus has infected everywhere within this operational matrix. And when you have a virus that comes in, you got to repair the system and then you got to bring the system back up. However, in order to safeguard and make that operational system stronger, you have to have better devices to stop the virus before it comes in. But more importantly, you may have to take some things out and then use a better code so that the system is better prepared the next time this comes around. So I'm hoping the same thing will happen, that this pandemic is that virus that's affecting the operational matrix. And once we jumpstart or get back into play, hopefully we will be better prepared and a better society. But that's just the optimist in me. I can't.
I hope so. I hope so. It's funny because if you were to create the Earth and to create civilization to find the truth, you kind of have to assume that collectively humanity is a good truth-seeking device. And
I don't, you know,
that's kind of a mixed bag. I don't know.
with everything that's going on, I would hate to think that we were an example of life and existing and living and doing everything, because a good portion of us are just fucking up
Hmm.
all kinds of shit. That's not a model to follow. And the thing is, we're not learning from our history. So history is constantly repeating itself in different ways. The characters may change, the circumstances may change, but what is actually happening is just a repeat of something that's happened maybe 10, 20, 50 years ago. So we don't learn from our mistakes. So I would hate to think that some extraterrestrial life force is examining us and the way we operating and using us as an example of how to duplicate that in another galaxy. I shudder to think what would happen at the end of the universe.
Yeah. No, it's funny you brought up Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is just one of my favorite books in high school. And I forget that I'm talking to a distinguished professor of philosophy here.
Eh, eh,
Um,
eh. Writing maybe, but not philosophy. That's just something I chew on when I get too tired of teaching. Right.
Okay, so remind me. So you're teaching writing, and you use philosophy to teach that.
I do. I do.
Okay.
I got see, let me backtrack for a second. The reason why philosophy fascinated me was because of a TV show. And you and I have talked about this, how I'm always looking for stuff in TV shows and movies. And the reason why is because I discovered what I know now just by one TV show. And that TV show is Xena, Warrior Princess.
Mhm.
So there's this one episode in which Xena's sidekick, Gabrielle, Xena dies, and then they kind of connect, and she comes back, or she reincarnates as a different person, right? And I'm like, what is this reincarnation stuff? What is that all about? That's kind of interesting. So I learn about reincarnation, and through that, I learn about Hinduism. And then from that, I jump over to Buddhism. So it's just a little seed that sort of just like grew and grew. So I got a chance to teach an advanced composition course, because I was up until that time, 9 times out of 10, I was getting a freshman comp kind of classes. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, I would get a one-off, like a digital photography class, because that was a thing that I learned how to do on my own. And I had started a small business. And the coordinator for the department at the time said, hey, you do digital photography, don't you? And I said, yeah. He says, well, my professor is retiring. You want to step in temporarily until we find someone permanent? I'm like, bet. So that's how I got advanced comp. But I wanted to make it interesting because it was online. And I think this was my second time teaching something online. And I really wanted to make it interesting.
Is this online because of the pandemic, or just because it's online?
Because it was just online. It was a summer course, community colleges, that's like another cash cow, the online courses, right? So I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to make this interesting? I wish I had the book with me. Mm-hmm. So whenever I'm trying to get an idea for anything to be creative, because I feel in teaching, I can be creative, and I totally take advantage of that. So I go to Barnes and Noble, which is my all-time favorite bookstore. I just walk around, not really searching for anything, just waiting for something to just jump up at me. And that's what happened. I'm in the clearance section, and I see this little book. It's only about this, and it was titled Philosophy 101. And it just gave like a brief preview of all the heavy hitters in philosophy. It didn't cover all of them naturally, because it's sort of like one of those little, it reminded me almost like a Reader's Digest kind of a publication, but just it covered a lot of different heavy hitters in philosophy. And so I stumbled upon Aristotle, and I was like, what is this Nicomachean ethics thing all about? Yo, that's kind of dope. So I'm reading Nicomachean ethics, and then I jump off to that. And then I find something else, and I jump off from that. So this little book sort of, sparked some interest. And I started looking and investigating on my own. I'm a professor. I have access to a whole bunch of material through the library. Use it. And that's what I did. So I was finding peer-reviewed articles about various philosophers, finding the breakdown of what some of these philosophers had said, because some of them are really just like, yeah. And you need someone to sort of break it down for you, so that you can, find some parallels and some kind of understanding on your own. So that's what I was doing. And I constructed an entire course using Stephen King, because Stephen King is like the dopest horror writers out there. Right. And you see all kinds of things about the human condition in his books. And there was one of his that jumped out at me as a movie, which was Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Didn't know that was based on a novella. Didn't know that was in a collection of novellas in which 3 of those were made into movies. So I said, oh, well, let me read these novellas. I'm down for a good Stephen King. Mind blown, especially apt pupil. I said, that is totally teachable, because the last thing I want to do is pick an 18th century British, whatever. And because students don't click with that, you got to find something that they click with. When they click with it, then they kind of understand it better. And everybody digs Stephen King, even if they didn't realize that they dug him. Totally. If you saw that movie, oh, Stand By Me, that was Stephen King. Yeah, that was Stephen King. Shawshank Redemption, that was Stephen King. So don't think of him as always as the writer with the bumps underneath the bed and the monsters hiding in the closet, because he is very sophisticated about the human condition. And he digs into those nasty places that we really don't acknowledge and we don't want to talk about. So I said, these two novellas will work great. Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, an apt pupil. And hey, what if I throw a little philosophy on top of it and use and make them learn how to take one concept and apply it to another in order to explain it and expand upon it. And I did it for the first time and they were like, I didn't know what to expect, especially since you're assigning the Lucifer effect. What's that all about, right? Philip Zimbardo did the Stanford Prison Experiment, but he also talks about what is evil and the fact that any of us, given a right set of circumstances, can be just as evil as those who do genocide. So my students are like, I didn't know what to expect, but by the end, I totally got what you were saying. I totally understand it. I've been able to apply it to my own life and my own actions, realizing that I maybe need to change as a human being, as an individual, and how I treat others. So I was like, yo.
Sounds like a good course.
Exactly.
Do you think the students got that too?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There were some things in which they really had to sit and think like, oh my gosh, I never really realized that I do that. Or, oh, my gosh, yeah, I have treated someone in that way. And here's the particular instance that I did it. And man, I was a real dick for doing that. Or I'm really a piece of work and I need to work on myself. Now, whether that's going to last for the extended lifetime that they're going to be on this planet, I don't know. And it's not really something that I was focusing on. My only thing was just like to open up their mind, because English courses can be extremely boring. A lot of people hate English because they have this perception of just sit there and read boring ass books and we write about them. No, it's a lot more complex than that, because in order to talk about what you've read, you got to write it down. You got to work it out in your head and work it out on paper so that you have a better understanding of it, So my goal was to break that perception of an English course. Everything else that came out of it, that's real dope. But that was my ultimate goal, to just like shake it up and say, this is what a writing course can look like, even a boring ass freshman writing course. And you may not think that writing is important now, but look at the stuff that I'm going to get you to write about so that you can see, you know what? Oh, okay. Now I understand writing is kind of important, regardless of what I'm going to be doing once I graduate from here. So that with every course that I do, how can I shake it up? How can I get them to think differently? How can I break whatever thinking that was in their head when they came in here? How do I just like light that spark and get them going in this direction and that direction? And I think I've been successful. One student,
there's something about writing which forces you to like write ideas down, and then once you see your own ideas on paper, it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like,
or wait a minute, I didn't wait. Where did that come from? Because sometimes you write and you just, if you really are not held back by anything, like, oh, my grammar, my spelling, this, that, and the other thing. If you take away all of those roadblocks that sort of prohibit people from really letting go on the paper, right? And you just write, like, just go for it. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about anything. Just let it all out. And then you step away from it and you come back to it and you're like, holy shit, what was I thinking? Where did that come from? I've never used that word in my vocabulary before. And you sort of, discover things about yourself through that process of, maybe I am better than I thought I was in this particular task or this particular thing or this particular way of thinking. Everybody should sit down and just write. Just don't think about it. Just let it go. stream of consciousness kind of thing. I mean, God knows authors have made their money off of stream of consciousness writing. So must be something to it.
You know, I just thought of this question, but what do you think the relationship between I guess literature and philosophy is? Do you think that, because I think literature, you know, you could write stories that express deep ideas, or that stories and narratives that express things about the human condition, and maybe it's easier to say those things in a story, rather than, like, maybe there's certain truths that are more expressible as stories.
I honestly think there are times when I read a book, and as I'm sitting there and I'm trying to process, you know, what's going on between the characters, I try not to look too much into everything. You know, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And as a writer, I know that, you know, sometimes I just throw something in there, not meaning for it to be anything specific, but someone else will interpret it as, oh, you know, that's really deep. What she's really doing is blah, 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 you know? So when I read something, I'm like, wait a minute, they're talking about Nietzsche. Wait, no, wait a minute. No, that's Rousseau. What they're really doing is providing a fictionalized version of a philosophy that was written by this dude. And it just, you cannot help but think that they have to, all writers, I won't say all writers because I cannot speak for all of them, but you have to sort of wonder if all of them ever sat in a philosophy course and one particular philosophy just jumped up out them and they sort of just like internalized it and kept it in the back of their head. And then when they had this idea for a really great story, what they're writing is a reflection of that philosophy that they stored in their head many, many years ago, because they were like, that's kind of interesting. And so when they're having their character do a certain action or do a certain thing, it's a reflection of that philosophy. For example, Road to Perdition. I just now saw this movie. I knew about it. Love Tom Hanks. Love Jude Law. Love all the guys that are in there, you know, heavy hitters. So I watch it for the first time. And again, I'm just watching the movie, watching the characters, watching the acting. And then something is jumping out at me. And the reason why it's jumping out at me is because a character speaks a particular line that is sort of like reflection of one particular aspect of a philosophy. And I cannot remember, it was a line that was said by Stanley Tucci, another great actor. And he says this particular line that basically says, well, here you're at this juncture. You can either go this way or you can go this way. And whichever way you pick, you're going to have to accept the consequences of whichever action or you choose to take in this particular situation. And I was like, oh my God. And after that, it sort of shifted the movie for me. And so now I'm looking for those junctions, because that's how the screenplay was written, in which there is a junction that the main character, the protagonist, reaches, in which he's faced with a decision that either puts him down that path in which he's slowly losing his morals, and his character is weakening with every action. It was already questionable to begin with at the beginning, but now he's really sleeping. He's slipping down into a deeper slope. Or he can pull himself out of this quagmire and go in this direction. And so I'm looking for those junctions. And I'm like, this movie, I can totally teach it. I know how to teach it. I know what philosophy to bounce against it. I know how to make the students do this. And my mind is just like racing, you know?
So, yeah, no, it's amazing how stories can crystallize ideas like that. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide, all, you know, coming full circle, because it's like you run the simulation, you just tell the story, and the story tells you what the truths are, or the story, you know, it's running the simulation. We do it in physics.
There are some things in Hitchhikers that go over my head. And I think it's because maybe it's a philosophy that I haven't learned about, or maybe it's one of those things, with atoms, in which a cigar is just a cigar and he just put it in there just to move the story along. And it really means absolutely nothing. And here I am trying to interpret it as something meaningful. And he's trying to say something, so, and that's a occupational hazard almost. And that's the reason why when I was going for my undergrad degree, I did not want to do English because I felt it was going to destroy my love of reading, that every book that I was going to pick up, I was going to look for the metaphors and the similes and try to gather the meaning and what is the author really trying to say through this character. And it takes out all the fun because you're clicked in that occupational hazard. And so I went and did communication. And through communication, at least at my university, that's how I really developed my writing skills. And then along comes grad school, and grad school killed my love of learning. Why? Because this time I'm not studying the characters. I'm studying how the writer wrote whatever it is that they wrote.
It's like
How
the relationship therapist just analyzing their own relationship.
Yeah, and it's sort of like it just kills it for you, and that's why anybody in the psychological field, they're a hot mess express. I honestly say all the crazy people work in either social work or psychology because their personal lives 9 times out of 10 are a hot mess express, and it's like you do this for a living, you help fix other people's lives. So how is it that your life is practically on the verge of collapse right now? It made no sense to me.
It's the sick doctor paradox, right?
What is that?
The sick doctor. You'd think the doctor's the most healthy person.
But he gets even sicker, even though he should know not to mitigate that factor. Yeah.
Right,
exactly.
right. Actually, this is something was going through my head as you were talking. Have you ever heard of the origin of the word meme? Like, where memes come from?
Yes.
Okay.
They are truncated syllogisms in which either the major or the minor premise or even the conclusion is omitted.
Wait, say that again?
Okay.
I love it. Hold on, say it again.
All right. So a meme is a truncated syllogism. You know what a syllogism is, right? There's a major premise, there's a minor premise, and when you bounce one against the other, it comes to only one logical conclusion. All right. So memes are truncated syllogisms in which either the major premise, the minor premise, or the conclusion is omitted.
Zip folders for concepts.
Absolutely. Now, for life of me, it's a Greek word. For life of me, I cannot properly pronounce the entire, but it's called ethmeme, ETHYMEME. But I have to go and Google it to pronounce it correctly. But that's what it's called. So there's 3 different types. One when the major is omitted, the minor is omitted, or the conclusion is omitted. And that's what memes are. Sometimes they are biased so much so that it's kind of ridiculous and it sort of ruins what a syllogism is supposed to be because the reasoning and the logic that's being used in that meme is biased or it's a logical fallacy. So the meme doesn't really work, especially if it's not accepted by the audience. All right. So that's what props a meme up and holds it and it supports it by itself. It only works if it's accepted by everyone. If it's not, then it's like, what the hell were they thinking? What the hell is that? That makes absolutely no sense. So that's why when you look at memes and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? The reason why is because it's worded in such a way in which not everybody can accept it or co-sign on it.
Well, it does disguise the premises.
It does.
And that's why it's probably what makes it hard to unpack, where people, instead of reacting let's say logically, you could react just emotionally because it's like you're not actually stating your assumptions or your thought process. You're just stating something which has some buried assumptions about people in it.
Exactly.
And
so
it's hard to unpack that in real time.
Exactly. Like there's this meme that sticks out in my head, and this was during the ice bucket challenge.
Hmm.
If you remember, the people were throwing ice buckets at each other, blah, all in the name of ALS, right?
Hmm.
So there's this one meme of this little African kid looking at this white lady. You only see the back of her head, and you see the kid like this. And, the meme is, so let me get this straight. You're throwing water at each other to raise money, so that, it's those kinds of memes that work because the premise is accepted by everyone. We know that it's stupid to waste water when there are countries that can't even get a clean water supply. They live in standing water, which is filled with disease. And here we are, we obnoxious Americans, we're basically wasting water, not only frozen water, but unfrozen water to throw at another human being who is not going to use it at all to wash themselves or anything with purpose. It's just to throw water at that person, all in the name to raise money for a particular disease. It's absurd,
Mm.
but
So
we understand it.
is that so? That's when your definition of memes. Did you get this from philosophy or English or?
No, this is, well, see, when it comes to writing, people think that it's all about putting sentences together and understanding grammar, the rules of grammar and things of that nature. Those are the basic, that's the foundation of writing. Writing, and we know this because our country, our world is in an explosion or is about to explode right now because of things that we are reading. What are people writing? And what they are writing is upsetting all these groups of people all over the place. Writing is not just about telling a story. It's about persuasion. It's about disseminating information. That's what writing is about. So when you are persuading people, what are you doing? You are creating an argument. You are arguing in defense of a particular position that you are taking regarding this subject. In order for you to have a really good argument in your paper, you have to understand the three characteristics of persuasion. In addition to that, you have to understand what's good reasoning and what's good logic. Why do we co-sign or believe in anything that we see? It's because the argument has been framed in such a way that we will accept it. So if we were, for example, for the longest time, I wanted a Mini Cooper. That's all I wanted. I thought they were the most adorable cars out there. So every time I saw an advertisement for it, I was like, oh my God, I've got to have that car. I got that car. That car was a Hot Mess Express because it is so flippin' expensive. The engine is BMW. Everything else is from this car part. And it's all high maintenance, all of it. But that's not what the commercials tell you, do they? No, what they tell you is that this is a fun little car. It's like driving a little go-kart. You will love it. You will never want to step out of it. But what they don't tell you is that car requires oil changes, full synthetic at $100 a pop. What they don't tell you is that the turbocharger that gives it its nice little zip and pep, when you have to replace it, it's almost $1,000 to get it replaced with labor. That's what the commercials don't tell you. What they do tell you is that this is a fun little car that you should drive. And based on that, without doing any kind of research, I went ahead and got a Mini Cooper. And in the 2 or 3 years that I owned it, with all the problems that I had, it must have totaled close to $10,000 to have fixed. Mm. So this is what writing does. This is what persuasion does. You have it in oral form in speeches. We know how rhetoric inflames and incites people. That rhetoric is also in written form. So whenever you're writing, you are always persuading, informing, or you're doing both at the same time. But your logic has to be tight. How you arrange your premises in support of whatever it is that you're arguing, that has to be arranged in a certain way. Because if it's not, if you're relying on one characteristic over the other two, then basically what you have is an empty document that doesn't really get to the truth of the matter. It's only written in a way to inflame and incite a person into action that will be even either positive or negative. And that's what people don't realize about writing. So they're like, oh, this is so boring. No, this is dope. I teach you how to argue. I teach you how to avoid the pitfalls of false arguments and false conclusions. And why, when you get into an argument with someone and you're saying, that doesn't make any sense. Now you understand why it doesn't make any sense, because the logic is whacked. So I think that writing, that's how I learned about memes, because that's all part of that logic, that truncated syllogisms that you can use in writing when you are trying to argue a particular point in anything, in speech or in written form. So that's how I learned about it. It was just like, oh, 3 characteristics. Oh, hey, what's this meme business? Oh, logical fallacies. Yo, that's dope. I like that. So, and once and when I do that, when I show them, they were like, oh, snap. So you mean I can't just sit down and just bang it out? Well, yeah, you can, but what is the purpose? Think of your audience. Who are you trying to persuade or inform? What is the goal of that document? Because that's going to dictate whether you can just sit down and just bang it out and not really think about it, or you got to sit down and really think about, okay, where's my logic right now? Do I have enough examples? Did I understand, or did I acknowledge the opposition in this writing in order to make it balanced? Because that's another part of having a well-constructed argument. Did you consider the weaknesses or the limitations of that particular point that you're making, right? And did you acknowledge that there's someone who is not going to agree with this particular point? You need to give them time and let them and bring them into the conversation. Otherwise, it's just one-sided, and there is no real exploration of what is the truth of whatever it is that you are trying to prove. And you see a lot of that. I don't want to name any particular networks, but we see that whenever we click on our TV. We have the far left, we have the far right, and they have their agendas. And so they're not going to acknowledge the other point of view, because that's not going to get the viewers. That's not going to get the Nielsen ratings. You get the Nielsen ratings by staying this way.
Yeah, you're stealing the thoughts right out of my brain.
So that's why with media, all media, I take it all with a grain of salt. Do I watch CNN? Yes, I do. MSNBC, of course, whenever the mood hits. Do I read the New York Times? Religiously. And I know that it is a left-leaning paper. I get that. I understand that. So whatever I read, I take it with a grain of salt. I don't have to read every article that's in there, because I know it's going to be like, oh, you know what? This offends me. Okay, click out. Click to something else. Oh, okay, I'm good now. You know. So I know that there is very difficult today to find an unbalanced source. I did find one, Al Jazeera. And that kind of surprised me. I like the fact that they show both sides of it. You know, there's just straight up reporting, you know, and I dig Al Jazeera. So, but I guess as far as where I feel my interests are most in alignment regarding media, it's more in alignment with CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times more than it would be with Fox or Breitbart News or any of those other. I go with where I feel most comfortable, but I take what I watch and what I read with a grain of salt, because I know it's biased. And it's very difficult. I mean, you have those underground papers, but even then you don't know if they're unbiased or if they are really aware of all sides of the issue before they wrote about what they wrote about. There's no guarantees nowadays. And so you always have to go into media with a grain of salt with anything, always question, Like, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me. Let me go find something someplace else and get another perspective on this, and then maybe I'll get the full truth of the situation that's being written about. That's the only way.
Yeah. I think I like to think about uh, the news and the stories that we digest as a sort of intellectual diet. And I'm kind of worried that a lot of the cultural gridlock and a lot of our inability to just have conversations with people on the other side comes from a bad diet. We're out of shape with regards to thinking critically, and we're out of shape with regards to looking at the evidence. And there's, I don't know, there's an intellectual obesity where we're sharing memes and we're shorting out arguments and hiding premises and trying to persuade with maybe too many memes and not enough fully laid out syllogisms.
Full discussions. You know why? Because I've noticed this because throughout the years, as I get older, my students get younger. And what I've noticed is this: attention spans have reduced significantly. It is very difficult for people to sit still. I cannot begin to tell you, and I don't know if it's anxiety, I don't know what it is, but people have really short attention spans, and so they want their food. What is it? Intellectual food. They
Sure.
want it. They want fast food. They want it quick and dirty. So that's what the memes give them. They give them that fast food intellectual thought without really, and of course, just like fast food, it goes in one end and it comes out the other real quick. And that's the same thing with that, in which you have your meme, you saw it, you digested it, it came out the other end, and now it's gone. Let me move on to the next piece of fast food. So that's what we have right now. We have people with short attention spans who basically want their information quick, dirty, and cheap, but not in a way that will get them to stop and think about things and sort of, saying, question it. Like, is this true? Let me go over here and let me verify. That's the problem right now. And over the years, I've noticed it. And that's why I get so creative with my courses, because I got to keep the attention span. I got to make them see that this is what you can do with writing. It's not just this horrible chore. It's an art. It's a skill. And over time, when you develop it, and you are so persuasive that you can change this person's point of view to this person's point of view, that's the greatest thing out there. That's the most powerful weapon you can have, is the way to persuade people in a way by exploring the truth of it. And acknowledging that, there are limitations and weaknesses, but let me bring you over to, what's missing, and how we can improve upon it. Because that's what critical thinking is, right? Is taking this idea, that idea, and analyzing it and examining the bits and pieces, the little fiddly bits of it, right? And you're taking it apart. And then once you sort of understand how all little fiddly bits work, you put them back together, you have synthesis, you put it back together, and then you add on to it. You go one step further than the conclusion that you have drawn after your synthesis. That's what's missing also. And whether people are too lazy to do it or don't know how to do it, remains to be seen.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there. I guess there's different categories of conversation, and I think something I've been thinking a lot about is the type of conversation between two well-meaning people who end up talking past each other. Because I've seen a lot of that, and just to give, I see this in religion and politics and in all sorts of areas of life. I just saw it last night, just to maybe put a fine point on the example. We had one of my friends had gone through a breakup, and the way it was getting handled after the fact, it kind of left her hurt. And so one of my friends was just kind of trying to rephrase the situation. Again, these are all people, all friends. We all love each other. What,
Rephrase the situation. I don't. What do you
well,
mean?
he's trying to make sense of the situation.
Oh, okay.
He's trying to explain, hey, here's probably what he was thinking, here's probably what you're thinking, and he's trying to make sense of it, right?
Hmm.
And the way it, again, all best intentions, that's never in question, but the way it comes off as you're trying to make excuses, right? And so sometimes when you talk about um, really heavy topics, or big ideas, and you're trying to sometimes you try to talk about emotional situations, very in a matter of fact way, and that comes off the wrong way. It's almost like, it's like talking about, cancer, where cancer is just this awful disease for the people who've been on the receiving end of it. But how do you fight cancer, and how do we actually end it? We have to talk scientifically and factually and emotionlessly and about it.
It's so difficult because you're dealing with life and death,
Mhm.
and whenever you're dealing with those two heavy hitting, um, issue not issues, it's just a way of life in one, with one disease. It's really, really tough to take emotions out of it, because that's where that fear comes in. All those emotions that make us human, that make us who we are, that comes into play. So you have that fear, you have that anxiety, you have that guilt. Oh, what did I do? I should have eaten this. I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe my years of smoking. God, I wish I hadn't done that. And you have all these regrets, and all these things come bubbling to the surface. So it's very difficult to extract human emotion with certain subjects. Some you could talk robotically. Math, there's no emotion in math. There's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no nothing. And that's why math is perfect for those who are not able to click emotionally right away. Math is perfect for those types of individuals.
Mhm.
But you have the weepy ones like me that just dig humanities and anything regarding humanities. And so when you talk about something that is, reflects the human condition, it's very difficult to, talk like, well, it's just a disease. It's just a matter of cells just doing this, and we all have, to explain it scientifically to someone who's weeping because they think it's a death sentence. It doesn't mesh, doesn't click.
Yeah,
It never will, because it relies on different sets of values.
yeah, and I think the tough thing, because I kind of see this pattern when we talk about, I don't know, domestic violence or race relations or economics or healthcare. It's like all these things have really emotional gravity to, tied to them. And if we're gonna, like, the question is, how do you talk about these things? Because on the one hand, you want to acknowledge people's emotions and people's lived experiences, but on the other hand, it seems to me like the language of solving these problems diverges from the language of the lived experience in a lot of cases. And where I think, again, the cancer example, the lived experience of someone with cancer versus the language of how do we solve it, there's a divergence there. And I think that's hijacked a lot of, like, just from my experience. Yeah, on the one hand, we have a poor diet of eating memes instead of good arguments, and then combine that with, even in the best of intentions and in the best world, it's hard to have these conversations, because I think the language of what it's like to experience something bad at a societal or cultural or health level, something that's complicated, the language that talks about your experiences is different from the language that we need to use to solve it.
Do you think that that's the reason why we haven't come up with a cure for cancer? Because we can't have that approach to finding a solution for it?
No, I don't think it's stopping us from finding a solution, but I think when you apply this to the cultural space, I think that does, because when you're talking about societal change, or if you're talking about politics, you have to have society kind of on board with um, the problem and the solution.
Mm.
And if you can't get over this hump of, how do we, if you can't get over the initial conversation hump, where it's like, how do we even have these conversations with each other? If you can't get over that, you're not going to get everyone on board when it comes to mobilizing society to do the right thing.
You're talking about that, and something just popped into my head. Now, Cuba has been always, in certain aspects, light years ahead of us in certain, within the medical field, right? And what's revolutionary about Cuba is that to earn a medical degree, it's free. You can go to medical school for free as long as you commit to the country upon graduation and you serve the country in order to sort of pay back for the education that you received, right? I thought that this was a really revolutionary concept. It is a concept that could easily be adapted, not just in Cuba, but worldwide. But we're talking, the reason why it will not be considered is because it came from Cuba. Cuba is communist. And communism goes against everything, this, that, and the other thing, and blah, 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 right? So here we have a really interesting model to diversify the medical field on top of it, because once you take away that particular roadblock, we talked about that. We talked about roadblocks. We talked about access to opportunity. That is a major obstacle to that opportunity, the cost of medical school. In addition to having that foundation before you even apply to medical school. Once you take away that, then you have a more diversified medical field. And that's what Cuba has. They have a very diverse medical field because they've removed a barrier to that access. So why is it just because it's Cuba and because they're a communist country, which I really don't think anymore because communism has been proven to not be very effective. I think they're using some aspects of communism, but they're not completely, totally communist because that island is able to survive economically from tourism, and tourism is capitalism. All right. So Cuba finally got the hint and say, we can't really get down with communism all the way because we can't, we got this embargo against this country that's 90 miles, northwest of us, right? So we can't even get some money from that country. So we got to rethink the way we do this communism thing, right? So here, this is what Cuba does. This is how they get their doctors. You see their doctors, they are dispatched all over the world. They were dispatched to Italy during the COVID because they did not have the capacity to deal with the outbreak. So Cuba went over there. Cuba went to Africa just recently and helped them out a little bit. They send their doctors, they sent them to Brazil for years at a time, right? So this is possible. This is doable. Cuba's more progressive, right? They don't have the obstacles. In addition to that, Cuba has come up with a vaccine for lung cancer. And they have been using that vaccine for at least 10 years now. And it has been proven effective. It does not eliminate the cancer completely. It reduces the symptoms. It reduces how it ravages the body. 10 years Cuba has had this. We will not even consider it because it comes from Cuba. Cuba has provided, they have developed an effective vaccine for lung cancer. You don't see how that could be used to sort of create a vaccine for other cancers, Hodgkin's lymphoma, breast cancer. We will not consider it because it comes from Cuba. Emotional. That, and I feel like that's a perfect example of that, in which we allow so much emotion to hold us back from seeing something as a viable solution to a problem that is ravaging the human race. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It is absurd. And only now, I think, finally, the FDA has approved the exploration of this vaccine from Cuba, only recently and in limited trials. It makes absolutely no sense. Why? And Europe is even more progressive than we are. Why? Because they don't have these ridiculous, they're able to look at it, I think, with a clearer lens and with less emotional. I think why you could go to Europe and get these very treatments that you would never see in the United States, because they're like, okay, we cannot say that this is the only way. This is the only solution to this problem. Doing it this way, this way, this way, this way. In Europe, they're like, let's consider this. Let's consider that. As long as we have people who are willing to be part of it to help us test it out, let's do it. Let's do it. And that's what's always going to hold back America as a country. Canada, we know they're down with British. Whatever the British do, Canada does. But even Canada, my God, universal health care, they've been doing it for forever. Prescriptions, dirt cheap. But yet we don't want to adopt that model because of this fear of how it's going to impact our economy, or it's going to take away from certain people. It's not. It's only going to take away from the people who are vested in staying rich. That's the only people that are going to be affected by that move. It's only going to benefit everybody else. It's only going to hurt the rich folks. And there's that emotional aspect, that fear. Once you have this money, this fear of it flying away. So you're going to do whatever it takes. That fear is going to lock you into holding in and holding back, as long as it keeps you being able to go to Saint-Tropez whenever you feel like it on a private jet.
I totally agree that the whole conversation around healthcare, at least, in the US, has totally been hijacked by these emotional arguments and, bad thinking. And it's weird to me, because healthcare at the end of the day is just a matter of how do we allocate resources to the right place at the right time. It's just medical resources getting to the right place at the right time. It's logistics. It's a math problem. Why are we getting emotional about this?
I guess it's because you're dealing with, in the case of medications, you're dealing with human beings who may live or die if they don't get that medication. There's, again, that emotional human aspect to it. So that's why there is this sort of like emotional virus as it pertains to what you've just discussed, because you're dealing with the pain and suffering of people. That is a very real, that's something that's across the board that everybody has experienced. And no one, and again, we're drawing in philosophy, we have a tendency to gravitate towards things that please us and run away from things that cause us pain. That's a basic human emotion that's built into our physiology. That's the reason why we still exist as human beings, is because of that fight or flight response. All of those emotions sort of kick in, and just the fear kicks us into overdrive, and we take off away from that danger, because we know that's a danger that could potentially end our lives. There's that emotional. You cannot escape emotions. It's very tough to look at a situation that affects the life and health of a human being and be sort of like robotic about it. It's just very difficult. And then if you do approach it from that aspect of being non-emotional, then you are accused of not caring and not feeling and not understanding. You're not able to practice compassion or empathy. And then what kind of human being are you if you can't do these things? So I think that's why we cannot separate and have those discussions, because we're dealing with the human condition.
So how do we thread the needle? So this is kind of this is one of the reasons I want to do podcasts, because like I think you have to have a revolving door between the brain and the heart, and you have to philosophize in the light of people's experiences. And I think what I'm trying to do is I'm really curious about, why do people believe things, and are those reasons good reasons? I'm not, I think a lot of times when we talk about especially big issues, we like to do some armchair philosophy and reason about it.
And
Um,
Monday morning quarterbacking also. Hindsight being 2020. That's what we do.
hmm,
We Monday morning quarterback everything. Well, if I was that person, I would have done this and da 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 da. And so we think that we know what we would do in any particular situation if
hmm,
faced with the same difficulties. But here's the thing, we've all been raised with different experiences, and we all approach certain things. We may sometimes approach them similarly, but there's still variants of differences, based on the values that we were given, our morals, how we view the world, how we think the world views us. All of those come into play,
hmm,
you know.
yeah,
So that's why it's sort of how do you thread the needle? It's a difficult question, because you don't
yeah,
want
for
to come
sure.
off as an unfeeling asshole. No one likes an unfeeling asshole. I mean, go on social media. You're an unfeeling asshole. We're cancel culture. That's the thing now. Like we are not going to accept that type of behavior. You will demonstrate that you are part of the human race and that you're able to feel what that person is feeling, step into that person's shoes, and be a better human being. And if you're not doing that, we're going to cancel you, regardless of what kind of information we have on you or about the situation.
Hmm,
We may not have the full story, but what we heard so far, we don't like, so we're going to cancel you. And we're not going to give that other person a chance to explain their actions or to justify why they did what they did. We're just going to immediately cancel them because that's it. That's unacceptable what you did. You're the lowest human being on the planet right now, and that's what we got. It wasn't always like that. I mean, of course, there were other ways in which we sort of showed our disapproval to another human being.
hmm,
We stoned them. That was real hot back in the day, right? We did all these things to show our disapproval. Now it's switched over into social media,
hmm,
right? So you got a presence on social media, but we find out something that you did 10 years ago that really showed that you were an asshole. Well, we're going to cancel you now because we don't like that behavior. We don't tolerate. We're trying to reset the moral code. But the thing is that we can't agree on what the moral code is. So how can you reset it to something that everybody can co-sign? Because everybody is in it for their own intents, for their own purposes. They want what they want when they want it. So their morality is going to shift in accordance with what they want and how they're going to get it. So
hmm.
how do you get a whole entire human race to agree to one particular principle? There's going to be varying degrees of it. Yeah, we understand that it's not all right to kill. We know that that's wrong. We know it's not all right to steal.
Hmm.
But if we all co-signed on it, why is it still happening?
I think there's an opportunity to turn liabilities into assets when it comes to diversity of opinions, because everyone has different brains, and certain brains are going to be better for certain problems. And there's a lot of different problems in the world, and some brains are better equipped for those problems. And is there a way of hijacking just diversity of opinions and diversity of perspectives? Can we get creative about getting the right people on the right jobs, if that makes sense? And one thing, eh, sorry, I don't know if you had a reaction to that.
I did, and there was something the words that you used that sort of reminded me of something, and then as quickly as it came, it went. But
Okay.
keep talking; it will come back.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of an example that's not super inflammatory, unless we just want to
Oh,
jump in,
just dive right
jump into the deep.
into the deep intellectual pool. Let's do this. We know that we have not we haven't held back,
Yeah.
but we have held back. And I
Yeah.
think the reason why we've held back is because of the medium that we use to communicate, right? It's monitored, right? So we let go, but we still hold back. Here, right? There's no, there's nobody monitoring, not monitoring. So here we can let loose. So just go.
This is a safe space for dangerous conversations.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. So one thing that comes to mind, because obviously we're kind of living in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and all the protests that ensued. Something that I've seen, which I've observed, and I don't hear anyone else making this observation, is that at the end of the day, everybody hates bullies, and people have different interpretations of the George Floyd case, of what it means culturally. Like, people have different interpretations of that. And I think people get hung up on debating how to interpret the situation. But I think that instead of getting hung up on that, I think there is an alternate universe where we could have realized that, hey, everyone hates bullies, and how can we channel that frustration into a healthy police reform?
I don't think everybody hates the police. I think
I tried to say bullies instead of police. Not all police are bullies. Yeah.
No, right. No. But I think what's happening right now is I did listen to the podcast that you sent me last night, and I'll get into that later. But I think what's happening right now is just it's reached a point where this is something that's been going on for so long. And just like all the other problems that keep repeating itself, like the mass shootings, it seemed as though, every time you turned around, every week or every other week, there was a mass shooting. And so there was that going on. And so there's this buildup of things. And it just reached a point where the narrative shifts. And the narrative before was, these Black people were caught doing something illegally. And during the course of their arrest, this unfortunate thing happened. Like, that was the narration. That was the narrative that was put out there. So you have these Black people that were doing something that they have no business doing. So if they died during the course of their, arrest, well, they got what they deserved. If they hadn't been doing it, then they wouldn't have gotten shot. All right. Now the narrative is shifting to which, hey, these people were in their homes. They were asleep. And a police officer shot them in their home while they were doing absolutely nothing illegal. Right? So now, that's why we tolerated that narrative for so long, because it happened all the time to a bunch of people who got arrested doing something they had no business doing, and they got what they deserved. But that's not the case now. Right? And so here we have these incidences of people who are not even safe in their own homes dying at the hands of the police. That is absolutely unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And so now everybody is like, that is it. We've had enough. It is time to really change the scenario. We have this pandemic thing going on. Everything is topsy-turvy. Now is the time to take advantage of the chaos and reprogram the operational matrix and make it run perhaps a little bit better than the way it was before. So this is what I see that's going on right now, because now it's personal. Now, not only is it racist, but these people are just the only place that we can be ourselves and feel remotely safe is our home. And we don't even have that anymore. And so the media has grabbed onto this and it has explored it in every type of way. You have social media. We have the citizen reporter now getting involved. You have all these things that are just building up, building up. And every week is something else. Everything is always something new. There's always another aspect to it. Now the family of George Floyd wants the UN to get involved. Do I agree with that? Absolutely not. America has a problem, but America has the resources to solve the problem. We don't need the UN to step in and declare that there is something wrong with this country. We know that there's something wrong. We could fix it by who we vote into office. We can fix it and be more aware. We can fix it by opening up our mouths when we see something wrong. We can fix it. We don't need the UN to step in. We don't need a foreign entity to step in and clean up our backyard. We have the resources, the money, the knowledge to fix it ourselves. So I think that all of these things are just making it bigger and bigger and bigger and huge. And now everything is being examined, every aspect of that particular oppression, because that's what it is. It's a form of oppression. And now we need to explore all of that. And now we're going to focus on the things that we always knew was there. We kind of acknowledged that it was there by ignoring that it was there. But now we're going to look at it a little bit longer. Oh, now all these people who have been writing about this white privilege, we're going to bring them back into the conversation when we ignored them when they first came out with it. So yeah, let's explore that. Okay. Oh, white fragility. Oh, this white woman acknowledged this thing in 2018. Yeah, let's trot that back out. And so now we have all this stuff that's coming into it. And it's sort of like this big, humongous jambalaya of all these spices that it's not going to work very well with each other and it will probably make you sick. So that's what I see is going on right now. Just like this thing that's just, I can't get down with this. This happened in this person's home. And on top of that, the person who was using his constitutional right to bear arms, right? He uses it defending his, and now he's arrested for attempted murder of a police officer. And then when it's revealed what the police did and what they
was this like this past week? Was that?
No, this happened right after the shooting of Breonna Taylor in her home. They arrested him on the spot. They posted he had to they put $1 million bond on him, I think.
Okay, I actually wasn't sure the example you were talking about.
Yeah, Breonna Taylor.
Okay.
So this man was defending his girlfriend, defending his kid. They were in the house when it happened and they arrested him. And then once all the dirty mud came out in the wash, they released him and they took back the charges. And it's just that whole situation by itself is enough to say that is absolutely, that's it. That's it. We've had enough. So now we're going to focus on everything. And all you white people, get ready because we're coming for you now, because now we're really angry and we got other white people to back us up with it. So now we're going to come after you, all you racist, all you sexist racists, all you racist sexists. We're coming after you now because now we realize that what happened to Breonna Taylor, it could easily happen to a white person or a Hispanic person. It could have happened to anybody, in which the police, not doing what they were supposed to do, not doing their job, not triple and double and quadruple checking, basically walked into someone's home and shot someone under the umbrella of the law.
So I guess I have a question for you at a kind of high level as far as how you're processing all this. Do you tend to see racism and sexism as let's say specific examples of racism and sexism, do you tend to see those as a few bad apples having really big effects? And another way I would phrase that is like, I don't know, sexism. Let's say video games, or let's say women in a male office. Um, from my experience, like most of the guys are just normal, and they're not saying anything derogatory, or they're not trying to be dismissive or anything. And there's a few guys who are, and who do that enough and who aren't called out on it. And so what is it like to be a woman? Well, you're going to work every day, or you're playing your video game every day, and you got to deal with the bad apples. And so that just defines your experience. And so I could totally see it just makes sense, just in a sort of statistics way, how a few bad apples could have a really big effect, from the perspective of the victims. Do you do you think that logic, explains a lot, or do you think that's missing something?
It is missing something only because I'm hearing from you that you sort of separated the perpetrators from the people who don't do anything. But here's the thing: the people who don't do anything, who don't check the people who are just as complicit as the ones who are actually doing the sexism. If you see the sexism, you know it for what it is. You know that if that individual was a male, they would never be talked to in that way or treated that way. And you don't do or say anything, then you're just as bad as the ones who are doing it.
Hmm.
So to separate that, it's sort of like it lets all you nice guys off the hook who don't say anything derogatory or don't treat women differently than you treat the men. But let's be serious. You do treat the women differently than you treat the men, because they're supposed to be, and this has been internalized into you without you even realizing it, the fairer sex or the weaker sex, and therefore they need protecting. Right? So we had a tendency to not see them. And if they exhibit certain characteristics that are male related, sort of like aggression or whatever, oh, well, they must be a lesbian, And I see that. There's one particular person who has been flagrantly sexist and racist, and no one says anything. All the other guys laughed. Oh, that's him just being him. Those are just as guilty as the one who's running his mouth and letting all this ignorant stuff come flying out.
So yeah, it seems to me like I'm on board with you, about how you're framing this, and that we do need the bystanders to not be passive. But what does that look like? It seems like the answer to this problem specifically is something like chivalry, where you see
speak
someone.
out.
Hmm?
You speak out.
Yeah, well, yeah, you try and find the person who's getting picked on, and you stick up for the little guy.
Right.
But I think it's weird, because this is hard to thread the needle, because when you say, oh, we've internalized this idea of the fairer sex or the weaker sex, and we have to hold the door open, but at the same time, your actual answer to your office space problem is something like chivalry, right?
No, because you can't. Doing the right thing should never be a gender thing. It should never have gender dynamics. All right, doing the right thing is doing the right thing, regardless of whether you're male or female. So if you see someone, let's take out the gender and sex aspect of it. If you see one person oppressing another person, another human being, you have the obligation to step in and stop the oppression.
You wouldn't call that chivalry?
No, I would call that being a human being that is stopping one person from oppressing the other.
It's the strong standing up for the weak.
That's how it should be viewed. I mean, it's fine to say, well, I'm a male, acknowledge my piggery. I acknowledge that I can be a pig sometimes, but I'm rectifying that by stepping in for a female and in essence, sort of coming to her rescue. No woman in this day and age, when women, are still fighting for their space of the dollar that's being earned, there are more women being educated than men in higher ed. There are more women, higher ratio of women to men in higher ed getting their education. So here we are, we're doing our thing. We're getting into the workforce. We're kicking ass and taking names. So the last thing we want is that to view a man coming to our rescue, as the prince riding in on the white horse, because then it strips us of everything that we tried to accomplish to be seen as an equal in the workforce. So it's a double-edged sword.
Well, I think this is a microcosm of exactly why it's very hard to have these conversations, because it's that I mean, it looks like chivalry, smells like chivalry, right? And I think there's a kind of hang up on this word chivalry. I think that's a thing, but it's what I mean. The strong standing up for the weak, But it's like, oh, that sounds derogatory for the person getting picked on. So, am I supposed to stick up for them or not? And this is a weird thing where how do I stick up for someone who's getting picked on without some implicit acknowledgement that they're lower on the totem pole in the social as far as they're just getting picked on.
Yeah. And but here's the thing. And I'm gonna, and this time I'm not going to use an example from a movie or a TV show. All right, this actually happened to me.
Yeah.
All right, so in the job that I'm at right now, I was a long shot, not because I was a female, but because I really didn't have any experience in technical writing, sustained experience in technical writing. Right. So in that, I was a long shot. And not only that, in the past, when the department had hired someone with an English degree, it didn't work out very well as far as what they did, regarding the writing. All right. So I came on board, and my supervisor at the time really was rooting for me. I mean, because he had a lot riding on me, because I guess he had to make a really strong argument as to why I should be hired. So, it was really on him to make sure that I succeeded, because if I succeeded, then he would have proven that he had what it takes to pick good horse flesh, for lack of a better term. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, now I got to do the damn thing. So I got to be better. I got to be quicker, stronger, faster, and I got to learn this job, because I want to prove to him that his faith in me was warranted. And I did that. Okay. And then he left. And it was as though all the strides that I made to understand my job really meant nothing. And that the only reason I was still there was because of the previous supervisor, and that I really did not belong there at all. So they started to make my life difficult. All right. I was still in contact with my old supervisor. We had a pretty good rapport. Every week we would sit down, we would talk about our families, our lives, things of that nature. So he was moved to a different building. And I went to go and see him, and, just to sort of catch up or whatever on our lives, not necessarily what was going on in the office. So he asked me the question of, okay, so what's going on in the office now? Because he knew that they had just recently hired a new supervisor, and he was quite unusual. All right, I'll just say that. So I was trying to be as diplomatic as possible. Actually, everything was going to shit. All right, because they were so interested in the fact that they basically The dad had left, the supervisor, dad had left. So now we're going to act like disobedient teenagers and we're going to do whatever we want. And we're going to sort of forget, how we used to run things. We're going to do our own agenda now. I didn't want to tell him all of that's what was happening. So I tried to be as diplomatic as possible. I only told him certain things, but not everything. Least of all, what was happening to me directly, because they were really sort of like picking on me for like the littlest of things where other people were getting away with practically murder. All right. So I told him that, and all of a sudden I saw his face cloud over and he started to change, and I didn't understand what was going on at the time. I thought that, I didn't know what I was thinking, but I didn't think that anything that I had said had brought about that change. So after I saw him, I went to go on my lunch break and I spent it outside the entire time. And I saw him crossing the street from his building to mine. And I'm looking and I'm like, where is he going? I thought, oh, he must be going to the cafeteria. He immediately went to the manager of my department. I had no idea what was going on. So I came back from lunch and I went to go and talk to a coworker. And the coworker said, oh, so-and-so was just here. And I said, what do you mean he was just here? I just saw him. He was in his building. What is he doing over here? Had no idea what had happened. What had happened was that old supervisor went and talked to the manager and said, what the hell is going on? Why are you letting this happen? I had this running efficiently. So why is it going to shit right now? I'm sure he used different words, but overall, that's what he did. Mm-hmm. I went to go sit down. All of a sudden, my new supervisor comes over and gives me 3 new projects to work on, taking it away from the other person who was basically making things very, very, very difficult in the office. So basically took away his work and gave it to me. And I'm sitting there and I don't always click and register with what's going on right away. It takes me a while. I'm slow in that way. So I'm looking at the jobs and I'm going, why did he give these to me? I don't get it. And then the big announcement, there's a shakeup. There's going to be a shakeup on the floor, right? We're going to start moving people. We're going to play musical chairs and all the writers are going to be grouped in with what they're working on, because right now they're scattered all over the place. Basically trying to eradicate how the previous person, the supervisor who left, but gave his input on who was to sit where, they basically ignored what he did and they wanted to do it themselves. And so what they did was, yes, they did group all the writers together by what they work on. However, I was pulled out of the general area and put in the back where no one can see me. No one knew where I had moved to after the shakeup on the floor. And everybody kept asking me, why did they move you back here if your group is out there? So that's a very good question. I know the answer. Now I understand what happened. It was retaliation because that person, that old supervisor, stepped in for me and said, what the hell are you people doing? I got you a fucking unicorn. The only person on the floor with a master's degree in writing. I got you a fucking unicorn who is also a United States Navy veteran who was discharged from the naval subbase. I got you a fucking unicorn. What are you doing to my unicorn? And in retaliation for that chivalry, I got put to the back where I can't be seen no more. So those are the pitfalls, the perils of what can happen when the oppressed, when the oppressor can step in and say, hey, you're oppressing that individual, cut it out, right? And then that person steps off and steps out of view and they turn around and they oppress a different way. That's not obvious. They're still doing it in retaliation.
It's also not good leadership. That's just not good. period.
And yeah, but when you are, and we see this, when you're wedded to a certain way of doing things, why shake it up? Because that means more work for me if I start doing things the way maybe they're supposed to be, or maybe it's a better way of doing them. But that means more work for me. That means more headache, more stress, more people complaining and criticizing. So it's just easier to keep things as it is. And when these little dust ups occur, we'll just move them. We'll move them out of the department, or we'll move them here. We'll move them there.
Did anything happen after that?
A decrease in work for me. That's what happened also. A decrease in the quality of work on top of it. So, and so there are, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. If you want to step in and you want to be chivalrous, if we're going to end all of this foolishness about, with sexism and things like that, it's always a double-edged sword, because your actions, even though they were the right thing to do, the consequences, you can basically walk away from them because you were just doing the right thing. What happens as a result of that? Oh, well. Or you can shift it and say, well, my morals are going to be a little bit flexible here because I'm trying to achieve a certain outcome. And that's to allow that person to stop being oppressed. So I may have to do something that may be morally irresponsible or morally unacceptable, but I need to stop this person from being oppressed. So I'm going to have to get loosey-goosey with it. And I may have to do things that I don't like doing or may not ordinarily do, but I need to sort of achieve this conclusion because it's got to stop. And that's where you are.
Maybe can you connect those dots? What do you think would be morally difficult about doing the right thing in that situation?
Because you're upsetting the apple cart. You're upsetting the apple cart for a lot of individuals who operate under a certain parameter, and any kind of change to it
after the fact. Yeah. Okay. I got you.
Right. So, that's, I think that if more people did understand that sometimes you got to risk it and sort of step away from your work. So for example, let me back up a second. So say you've always been taught to respect your supervisor and to never go against your supervisor or, to question their authority. If you stick up for the oppressed and be that chivalrous individual, you are basically going against.
You're putting your neck on the line.
Right.
Well, yeah, this is just institutional bullying is no joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really is. It does create tough situations. Like you're absolutely right.
So you see your supervisor is doing something that goes against your code. It's wrong, but it's also wrong for you to step into that supervisor and say, you are awful right now. You are not anything what I thought a supervisor should be, and you need to stop whatever it is that you're doing because it's just plain wrong. By doing that, you're going against your own moral code of not questioning authority, because by doing that, you are questioning authority. A supervisor, a manager is authority. And for you to question their decision or their actions, for some people, they can't do that, especially if they've been trained to not question authority. You've been trained.
For you personally, how many of your problems in the workplace have been, would you say, institutional like that, where it has to do with, higher ups making decisions like that, screw you over, versus just individuals, being shitty to other individuals? Does that make sense?
In the building that I'm in, on the main floor, there are old pictures that are posted along the walls. And I look at the pictures, and I don't see not one person of color in those old pictures. A lot of them were taken in 1920s, 1930s, 1950s. Not one person of color. And they have been operating under that for so long that the little bit of diversity the company cannot handle, because they have been used to operating under a particular, I can't come up with the right word right now, but a particular way of operating within the company, the kind of people that are there who are more or less all have the same values, right? And so you have all these different people coming from different backgrounds, coming in and mixing and sort of changing this understanding that's been going on, that this company has always been all white. This company has more or less operated by class rather than race, if you think about it, because you have the shipyard and then you have the people up on the hill. You have the lower educated people on the shipyard. You have the higher educated people up here on the hill. That's class. So that company has been operating under class. Now that company has to operate not only by class, but now by race and now by gender. You got old timers that have been there damn near 50 years. They have operated under that class separation. They're not ready for the race or the gender. That company was practically all male and all white for all those many years. And now the landscape is changing. But the way it operated, they're still trying to hold on to that. Yeah, they bring another person of color here. They're bringing women in left and right. Yeah, that's fine. But they're still operating under that old way of doing things. And then you bring all these old military people into it. Oh, forget about it. Our company operates as an extension of the military. All the values that are wrong with the military are mirrored in the company. And so
I want to say something. Maybe it's nice and optimistic for me sitting on my armchair, but I tend to be optimistic about institutions or organizations that are about, let's say playing a certain game. I'm optimistic that you're not going to see just bad behavior towards minorities and women. I'm more optimistic about that. And so, just to give an example, I'm into chess. Chess over the past few decades. I don't know if it's a few decades, but chess, it's originally like a lot of Russian players, a lot of European players, and a lot of Indian players. And that was who dominated the game. And then, as it spread to other cultures, and you start seeing people of different colors and shapes and sizes start playing chess. And when it first opened up to the world, it's like these people look different and they're going to get all the off comments. But at the end of the day, you have more brains playing this game, and that's good for the game. And people wake up to that, and the number of off comments go down over time. Because at the end of the day, it's about the game that brings everyone in that community together. And so over time, it just gets better just because people get used to it. And
exactly, it's normalized. It's normalized now, right? And I think that's what you're basically saying. Like, we need to normalize certain things.
Yeah, and if you're in a company and the whole point of the company is to build ships, and you open up the workplace to a more diverse set of brains, it looks different at first, and you get off comments and weird behaviors, and there's a learning curve. But I would think it just gets better over time when people get used to it.
Well, I have to give your generation credit. All right, your generation and the generation before you, because you're the post millennials. I forget. There's the millennials and the post millennials, right?
I'm a 90s kid.
Right. So you're a millennial. You are a millennial, right?
Yeah, 95.
Yeah. So I have to give your generation credit, because your generation is the woke generation. All right. Yours the generation that just flipped the script on everything. Flip the script. Basically change the landscape. And a lot of you are coming out the pocket with stuff that would never be considered before, and you're making it work. So I think that the more you millennials pile into the company, I hate to say it, but your generation is going to be the one to change the landscape, because my generation, we're the ones that are so used to this bullshit that we're like, you know what, whatever. I just came here to work. I'll come in at this time. I leave at that time. That's it. That's my generation. Your generation's going to like use social media and come up with stuff that we would never ever think would work, but you make it work. Right. So I think as more of you pile in, that may change that landscape at that company, to which that behavior that has coasted along, all those old timers, as they leave, as they retire, you guys are going to be ones who have the opportunity and will change the landscape of that company from that old way of approaching certain things and looking at it from this way. Like when I teach for the apprenticeship training program, I saw there are two women in there. One is a carpenter, one is a welder. And I'm like, you know what? That's dope right there. And both of them are millennials. So that's what I mean by that. Like, your generation is going to be the one, if anything, to change that landscape. However, the company also needs to realize desperately, because they're losing really good people, that engineers alone don't make a company. It takes many different disciplines to make a company successful. And our company is throwing all their weight behind engineers and not really providing opportunities from other disciplines to show how they can contribute to the company as well. Because you have people who are taking business.
We do have the biggest egos. So
but you're also the most difficult to understand. Is like, why can't you just say it the way, just simplify it? Why do you have to go over the river and through the woods down by the brook in order to come back to the point? It's like, okay, I lost 5 seconds of my life that I will never get back listening to you explain something.
I tried.
2 seconds to say. That's the problem I have. Other than that, it's all good.
Yeah. No, one of the guys on my team, oh my God, our supervisor made a joke about one of the guys on my team. He's like, yeah, this guy, he likes to explain the whole history of the world to you when he's explaining something. You know, it all started with the wheel. Actually, no, wait. Before the wheel, there were just logs, and people were rolling around logs. And my supervisor was just giving him shit for explaining the backstory of every little thing. It was great.
But yeah, so
I don't. It's all right. So it's interesting because woke is one of those words that, like, I don't consider myself woke, but I also, like, I care about getting, like, I care about the game, and the more brains we have in doing our game, the better it is for the game. And I see that with everything, like
Mhm.
everything I'm like, I don't want to ramble too much, but, like, growing up, I played baseball in Little League, and I grew up in New Britain, Connecticut, and it's a third Italian, a third Polish, a third Puerto Rican, so we had cultural diversity, and we all got together and played baseball in Little League, and it wasn't about, like, when you're playing baseball, like when I'm pitching on the mound, you know, I the I'm just trying to strike a batter out. I don't care about anything else,
Right.
and the color of your skin is just like your hair color. It's
It's
not
just an attribute. It doesn't necessarily determine who you are as a person.
exactly. And I take that mentality. I like to think that I take that mentality everywhere. Where when I go to work, it's about work, and when I play chess, it's about chess, and when I play music, it's about the music, and I I I don't, and because of that, like, that's just my attitude towards life, and that's just what I grew up thinking, and that's how I see the world now. And so I don't consider myself woke. I just consider myself a player of all these games, and I want what's best for the game, because society is just a bunch of games, isn't it? And if we could all just play them well.
Oh.
together?
You know, in an idyllic world, it would be that way. But when you let's strip away race for a second and let's talk about the basic emotions that we all experience and those fears that compel us to do things that we have no business doing. We all have them, we all experience them, but our fears are different. And those fears are shaped by our experiences and what we see and how we process things. So what you fear is going to be way different from what I fear. And those fears are going to come from my experiences. So if I'm sitting in the office and something happens that I know should not have happened, should not have been said, or anything like that, and I know that it's related to either my skin color or my gender, you can't help but be affected, so much so that you approach every space that way, in which you're always on your guard and you're always wondering, okay, who's going to come at you sideways now? You always got to look over your shoulder and watch your back, and you got to keep your back against the wall to stop the people from stabbing you in that back.
Can
You
you
know?
zoom in on that? So like, what's your experience with that? Like,
Well, like,
if you're comfortable talking about it.
no, it's fine. I think my first experience with it, and I was so naive. When you're in your 20s, oh my God, you really don't think that there are people out there that are like working, to hold you back from stuff or keep you away from stuff. So I was in my 20s. I was in the Navy. I was extremely naive about so many things. And I really had that look of things like you did. Like, I can't really understand why they would do something like that. It doesn't make any sense to me. It couldn't be because of I'm a pretty decent person. So they couldn't be talking to me this way or treating me this way because of my skin color. That makes no sense. And that's how I
just comments and things like that.
It would subtle. It's a myriad of microaggressions, and we know what microaggressions are. For example, and I experienced a microaggression. This is one that sticks out in my head as a good example. So I was temping for one of the insurance companies here in Hartford. And as a temp, I felt like my supervisor, temporary supervisor, insisted that I would go to these staff meetings. I didn't really consider myself staff. I was a temp, but certain things were discussed that were related to what I was hired to do. So she wanted me there. So normally when I went into those meetings, I kept my mouth shut not because I felt like overwhelmed by the lack of color in the room, but because I'm a temp. So I really don't have a say in anything. So I would just sit there and be quiet. Well, one day that we were talking about the assets that we were working on, and I started talking about how I didn't know what outriggers were until I started working on these assets and why this insurance company insures companies who have cranes with outriggers. I was like, what is it? What is that? I need to understand it. So I was, I said, it's amazing to me that here I didn't know what outriggers were or what their function was, but I go outside and they happened to be working on the old State House. They were working on the spire. And what were they using? They were using a crane. And what was on the crane? Outriggers, right? So I was explaining all of this in the meeting. So we come out of the meeting and it was lunchtime. We were all going downstairs and everybody starts asking me questions. Oh, are you a professor? Are you this? And I was like, yes. Well, you speak very well. Microaggression. Very well for what? I'm an English professor. I should be speaking well. So how am I speaking well for what? Speaking well for a Black woman, right? That's how I perceive it. Those myriads of microaggressions. So, you're smart. You're smart for a Black woman. That's how, like, all these little things that really don't see, but they're like little like cuts of a knife every
I
time.
think I'm missing a detail. So how do I compliment you? Because you are a good speaker, objectively.
Objectively,
How do I compliment you?
and immediately I think of Mel Brooks, and this is good. I love Mel Brooks, right? I love all his movies. Blazing Saddles. There's this there's this one line in the movie where the sheriff, not the sheriff, because the sheriff was Cleavon Little. The mayor, the mayor was Mel Brooks, and then you had Harvey Korman's character, right? So he's Hedy Lamarr, that's his name. So Slim Pickens, he says something. So Hedy Lamarr says something, and his sidekick, who is Slim Pickens, says, "Gee, Mr. Lamar, you got a tongue prettier than a $20 whore." So
is that how you want to be complimented?
But I just think of that line, and and if someone were to spit that out at me, I would not, believe it or not, I would not be offended, because I know where it came from, right? So if you wanted to say, "Gee, Lisa, you got a tongue prettier than a $20 whore," I would not be offended.
Was there something about the way that person said it which made you think, oh, you're a good speaker for a Black woman? Was there something about the way they said it that made you?
Because it did not make any sense. If you know that I teach English, if I teach writing, that I have to have a good command of the language in order to teach it, in order to tutor in it, in order to be published in it. I have to have a good command of English language, not only just writing it, but speaking it as well. And if you knew me, if you knew my background, then it would not be a surprise to you that I speak as well as I speak. But it was that subcontext, that little balloon, that thought balloon that hangs up whenever someone says, "Gee, you speak very well." Well, what do you mean I speak very well? If
I'm still hung up why you can't take that at face value. Because someone like I've said that, I've literally said that about, I was at a graduation, and one of my friend's dads gets up to do a little speech, and he's very polished, and I was just impressed at how polished he was, and I knew his job, and I know he presents for his business at a high level, so I knew that, but I still made a comment like, "Oh wow, he really is polished." Like,
you said polished, not well spoken.
That's what I meant.
But that's not what you said. You said polished. We're talking semantics here. But
we are because there I think I'm.
But why would you use the word polished? But with me, it's well spoken. It's the same thing.
It is the same thing. It's a synonym. Who cares?
But why wouldn't you use polished on me?
I would.
But you didn't. Roll it back. You said, "But you are well spoken." So I don't understand.
That was a phrase you used.
But you didn't say polished.
You're a very polished speaker.
Oh. It's too late now. The microaggression has already been perpetrated.
No microaggressions here. No. Nonsense.
But yeah, it's a matter of words, but words we know are very powerful. They have meaning because we attach meaning to them, to quote the Matrix, right? Words are just words. It's the meaning that we attach to them that make them significant, and that's why they can hurt. That's why you can put a person up on their defensive quicker than you can whatever, right? If you use the wrong words. Words matter. They always matter. So it may be a matter of words in order for a person of color like me to not feel as though I am experiencing a microaggression. Then yes, I would rather you say, "You know what, you're a very polished speaker." I'm like, yo, thank you. All right, thank you. One love. But if you say you're well spoken, whoop, the antenna's already up. My defenses are up. The wall is up. My face will change. My demeanor will change. Words are important. They are.
Okay. So I guess my reaction to this is there's what was said, like there's the facts of the situation and there's what was said and there's the words and their definitions, but then there's how did we interpret the situation, right? Um, why do you think why do you think you interpreted that situation um as a microaggression? And the reason I'm asking is there's a sort of obvious there's an like I'm thinking about chess. There's an obvious line here where there's an obvious few moves that could derail this conversation, which I'm trying to avoid, which is look, you seem to be hurt. I don't want to say offended. You seem to be hurt by one synonym but not another, and that that seems I'm not that seems dumb in a cosmological sense. I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm saying like there's something weird like I don't understand the psychology there. Like can you like I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm saying I'm like I really want to understand I want to understand your situation here.
All
Because
right.
like how do we get to a point where one synonym hurts but another doesn't?
It's
Like I really want to understand this. Like
because of the meaning that's attached to it. Because
did do you think that meaning was attached to it?
well,
Like do you think
because
that's true or do you think you interpreted that way?
it's all about interpretation. Whether the intent of the person is irrelevant. It's the interpretation and how I feel from it is what counts in that transaction, right?
So why do you think your emotions are mapped on to the abstract meme and not the intentions?
Because of perceptions of people of color that we could not possibly be educated enough in order to have a good possession of the English language or any language for that matter. There's that hovers out there that we all speak Ebonics. Now, granted, there are some people, Black people, who don't know Ebonics. There's people like me that interchange Ebonics with proper speak, right? And then there's the ones that straight up do Ebonics. Like my younger son, half the time I have to tell him, you're talking to me, please talk English, do not talk Ebonics, because I don't understand what you're saying, right? So there's always that go-to of a person of color with the only ability to speak Ebonics, but not possess or have a firm possession of the English language and all the intricacies thereof, right? So for someone to say to me, you're so well spoken, in my mind, my reaction is that, oh, well, I must be from the ghetto. And because I'm from the ghetto, there's no possible way that I could have a good command of the English language. That's how it works in my head. That's how it works in my head.
I understand that part.
Mm-hmm.
I think
So that's why one word would not offend me, but the other one will, because the other one is the one that's used to most when trying to compliment a person of color, to say, you know what, you're well spoken like Frederick Douglass was, and like W.E.B. Du Bois was. You're well spoken like those people, you know. So it's just that, you know, why do I have to be that story, that narrative of the person from the ghetto who makes good with their lives and gets educated and learns to speak well, you know, that kind of a thing. All of these things are going through my head, not necessarily all at the same time, but it's sort of like there's just certain words that just automatically just trigger that perception in my head. And it just, and it's because of other macro or microaggressions that have occurred that bring about that defensive switch. And I'll give you a perfect example. For whatever reason, and I'm still trying to really, I'm trying to be emotional about it or solely put it on my color. But for whatever reason, people cannot see me as a college professor. Ever. I've had people in my department say, you know what, I'm really, I can't see you as a college professor. And I go, why can't you? You've had conversations with me. Why is that difficult? And so I want to say, oh, okay, maybe because I don't look my age, maybe that's it, and I try to rationalize it that way because I don't want to automatically assume that people cannot see me as a college professor strictly because of the color of my skin. I don't want to think that way. So I want to think, okay, it's because maybe I look I look so young that I couldn't be a professor. But wait a minute, there are professors out there that are 30 something years old and look way younger than I do. But you would never say, oh, well, you don't look like a professor. So what is it about me? Right? So.
Well, you're not dorky.
I'm not dorky. Maybe that's it. See, again, like I try not to solely just say it's got to be my color. But here's the thing. So I must have been 2 years into teaching. I was teaching still at the first community college that gave me my start. And I was teaching digital photography. The door to the classroom was supposed to be unlocked. They're all supposed to be unlocked, because it's on the schedule that a class is supposed to be in there. But for whatever reason, my classroom was locked. So I had to call somebody to come and unlock the door for me. Now, I got there before the class begins because I always do. I always get there 10 minutes to set up and do whatever. So the person who came with the keys, she came and she said, "Where's your professor?" I said, "I'm the professor." And she goes, "Oh." And then she unlocks the door. Right? So is those types of microaggressions that have put up my radar, especially with anything having to do with, me, being in good command of the English language or anything like that, is those little microaggressions that occur, oh, you're a professor? I can't believe you're a professor. And it hurts after a while. It's like, well, what do I need to look like? Should I just stop, putting a rinse in my hair and go all gray, right? Will that do it for you? Will you believe me then when I say that I teach college writing? Like there are people who I've been working with for the past 5 years that only through this pandemic recently found out that I teach college level writing. And now there's this one guy that's so fascinated. You're a professor. You're a professor. Like repeating this. I kid you not. And again, it's like, he's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were that, you were. And I had to take it away from him and say, "You mean a smarty mixed smart pants?" And he's like, yeah, a smarty mixed smart pants. I had to take it away from him because I did not want him to go down that road because I didn't want to be able to see him in a different way. So I had to grab it and just change it so that he didn't say something that was going to make him put his foot in it. So I hope, baby, that sort of clears it up.
Yeah, I guess just as a friend, I would be concerned about you. I had something was going through my head. I had another friend who was a female who was in abusive relationships before, and she had also really just got shafted with awful workplace environments, and a lot of little things would really give her this existential just dread of because from the past abusive relationships and getting harassed in other ways, she has this idea in her head where that I'm not valuable, I'm not lovable, and she struggles with that, and she interprets a lot of little things to confirm as confirmations of this big thing. And some of those little things might be like, an off comment that a friend made, a friend who really likes her, and she's one of the most lovable, charismatic people in our friend group. She's one of those people who very, very bubbly, outwardly, sociable, and kind of internally internally dying a lot of the time. Um, and like some she'll interpret some off comment that a friend said as just confirmation that she's just this it's like lesser being, and like that's just I'm what I try to tell her, that's like she is factually wrong about that, where she is one of the most loved people that she's one of the most lovable people that I know, one of the best people with a great heart, and everyone sees that about her, and it's obvious that everyone sees that about her. Like just having an unbiased opinion of how people perceive her, and she still manages to interpret certain situations as negating all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And as a friend, I'm just worried for her, because it's just it sucks to be in that position, just mentally. It's just wear and tear, and it just seems like it's frustrating for me, because I don't struggle with that, and so it's easy for me to say, hey, that's not true, but on the one hand, I understand what it's like for little things to confirm this big narrative, and I understand what, like, some of that feels warranted and some of that doesn't. Where some of the time I think, like, all right, I can understand why you interpreted it this way, and other times it's like I don't know what to say aside from no. Like, no, that's you're just wrong about this situation, just as a friend, because she's beating herself up about these little things, and it's like, what do I do as a friend? And I'm kind of like I'm trying to locate I'm kind of locating you somewhere on this spectrum of you obviously have had bad experiences, and obviously, like, it seems to, like, seemingly little.
It bears on you. It really does. It really does. And it's to the point that I'm like, I almost expect it. Like, I don't expect it, but I do expect it, because if you're prepared, then the blow doesn't hurt as much. You know what I mean? Like, if you know that the blow is coming, you can sort of absorb the shock and maybe push the shock back. But that's how I operate right now. And I've been operating like that. I didn't always operate like that. It only happened when I got my master's, right? Because now, the one thing that stuck out from my commencement ceremony was when they said, now you are part of a community of scholars. And I sat there because I was just like, I just want to get my master's degree. It really wasn't a big deal. It was just like the next step. But when he said that, I said, you know what? I do kind of have a responsibility to this education. Otherwise, why would I go through all of this, unless I expanded beyond what I learned in grad school. That's the obligation that I have to me, not just to the education that I received. So, and everything that I went through, even within grad school, it's that alone was tough, because once again, I'm the only person. I was one of two people of color in that program. And anything that I put forward was ripped apart more than anything else. I brought in a story. It was a short story that we were workshopping, and the story was about a woman of no race whatsoever mentioned, just a woman who was finding a way to breathe again. She decided to leave her husband and move across country. And that's what the story was about, right? She knew her marriage was falling apart for a while. Of course, it's based on my life. All my writing is based on my life. Don't let any writer tell you different. But that was the story. That was what it was all about. And the story was called Breathe Again. So I brought it into the workshop. The facilitator, really great guy, matter of fact, he's an attorney in West Hartford, but he also teaches writing. And so he really, really just grabbed onto my writing. I don't know why. There was just something about it that he liked a lot. So out of all the stuff that we had to submit in workshop, he chose my short story for everybody to read, right? So they read the short story. They know it's mine. Do you know, for 5 minutes, they discussed not the story, but the fact that the title did not match the story and that it should be a different title for 5 minutes, until the facilitator broke it up and tried to get them to talk about the story, and they couldn't. So it's this kind, these things that occur that sort of build up that defense mechanism and also make me like hyper aware to just like look for them, because they're all over the place. They're going to happen eventually. One of them is going to drop on me eventually. And that's how I navigate, because I'm just so used to it. I have to put up those defenses and have to be hyper vigilant, because if I just sit there and just take the blows, God knows what I'm going to turn into, you know, that I'm just going to look at everybody in a certain way. So I have to acknowledge two things. Number one, I am always going to be reactive. And number two, sometimes people don't realize what they're doing. And sometimes it can be completely innocent that it slips out, but other times it's going to be deliberate. And regardless of whether the intent behind the comment, I still have to be prepared for it. That's how I operate.
All right. I guess where do we want to go from here? Because I guess there's the question of managing your reaction to a microaggression, and that's one discussion. It's how are you interpreting these situations, and how are you doing personally about it? And then there's the question of, do you think that the microaggressions like this influence your broader sense of how, like, does it reinforce your broader sense of how society is and cultural assumptions? Because if you say someone had a slip up over a synonym, which it doesn't seem to like, to anyone else listening, it doesn't seem to be loaded. Like, it doesn't seem to be a culturally loaded thing to say that you're well spoken. Like, it just doesn't seem that way, I think, to most people hearing that. And so, do you think you're using those examples do you think they reinforce your broader picture of society, or do you separate how you felt about it from the way you understand reality? I don't know if the question makes sense.
In order for me to say that this is representative of society as a whole, I would have to get out more. I cannot take the experiences that I have in this particular area of the country and say that the same thing will happen if I go to the West Coast, because they operate by a different framework than we do on the East Coast, or someone in the Midwest, right? So it would be irresponsible of me to say that. I cannot stand in front of a classroom and teach what I teach and say what I say, and then do the exact opposite. It's like it would be like I would expect every student that comes into my classroom, right, to act a certain way because of my skin color. I cannot be an effective teacher if I do that, because I'm all the time thinking, okay, how can I dispel these stereotypes and how can I stop them from doing them? I'm not effective. So there are times when I really have to look at reality and say, I cannot think that all of society operates in this manner, that it's just maybe in this small microcosm based on how it operates, that it clings to this type of approaching certain people in certain ways, right? But I can probably find something different down in the South. I could probably find something different on the West Coast. So maybe there is a place where I can let my guard down, where I don't always have to expect some sort of wrong synonym to be thrown at me, that maybe there is some place that just sees me as a person and not as a representative of an entire race of people. There probably is. I haven't experienced it yet. I'm sure it's out there. So I think of it that way. And I have to. Otherwise, like, I can't go through life. Life is too short to be sitting there worrying about every word that's thrown at me. I got other things that I'm more focused on, that I enjoy. And with the little time that I have left on this earth, because nothing is promised to us, I have to stop allowing all these little cuts of a knife to affect my psyche and just say, you know what? The world is beautiful. There are a couple of people who just don't get it. There are a couple of people who don't want to get it. And it will always be this way.
I think I'm trying to help give you the intellectual license to let yourself do that, because couldn't you just have, like, when someone says you're well spoken, it seems like you interpreted that as a racist microaggression, and I understand perfectly what you said about you don't have time to go about your life worrying about splicing hairs over synonyms. Like, it's just not a good way to spend time. But again, this is easy for me to say, but couldn't you just say, well, that wasn't racist. I interpreted it as racist, but it wasn't. And then I could move on. And that seems like, just as someone who's listening and, sitting nice and comfy in my armchair, who hasn't experienced that before, that's kind of what's going through my head. Does that make sense?
No, it does. But that would, you're asking me to change a habit, right? That's what you're asking me to do. You're asking me to consider changing a habit, because now it's a habit now. It's something that I automatically redo. That's just like me reaching for this, right? So it is quite possible to change that habit, because I did it because I was a smoker. I used to smoke cigarettes. Now I vape. So it is quite possible to change a habit. However, even though I have a different device, I still do the same. I still grab for it the same way I used to grab for cigarettes. Like right now, I would be chain smoking. Right? So it is quite possible, but with all habits, they're very hard to break. And you have to, every single time something like that happens, in which an offensive synonym is thrown at you, or what you perceive as offensive, for you to stop and say, all right, let's break it down, Lisa. What was being discussed before it? Why do you think they said it? And to go through all that analysis is exhausting.
Exhausting was exactly the adjective that popped into my head.
So it's easier to just say, and just move on with it, right? I think the most that I can take out of any particular situation is to keep in the back of my head that not everybody thinks that way. Not everybody perceives me in that way. There are people who know me, and they know that that's just who I am, not because I'm Black, but because that's who Lisa is. So I go through the day, trying to keep that in the back of my head, that not everybody perceives me in that way. And this is how they perceive me based on their experiences and how they were taught. And I can't change that. The only thing that I can do is just be the fabulous me that I am. And eventually they will come through. What else can I do? I
Fabulous
don't
and polished
fabulous and polished,
and
right?
distinguished professor.
Because I don't have time to be correcting people's behavior every single time that they say something that is borderline offensive. I just don't have the energy. I don't have the time, and I really don't give a shit at this point. If you want to perceive me that way, that's your business. I know otherwise. But if you start putting roadblocks in my way because of your perception, then we got a problem. And now I have to show my color and let you know that that's unacceptable. And if you want to perceive me as the angry Black woman, well, go right on ahead. Yeah, I'm angry and I have every right to be angry. And it's not for you to take it away from me because, you're resting it on a stereotype. I have every right to be angry because of what you're doing right now, because it's wrong. It is wrong. And you need to acknowledge that. Don't pretend that you didn't know what you were doing. You were aware of the action when you did it. We all are aware of what we do when we do it, unless our consciousness is altered either by injury or by drug.
When you say you know what you're doing, are you still talking about the well-spoken versus polished?
Right. The words that, or the microaggressions or the straight out racist behavior. These people are fully aware of what they're doing. Right? So
I don't think the person was aware of the well-spoken versus polished.
But they said it, but they said it. They knew that they were saying it, right? So they were aware of the action. They just weren't aware of the consequences of that action. But we never are.
Yeah.
We are never aware of the consequences of that action. However, if we are aware of other instances that are similar to what's being discussed right now, and that if you say this, you will get this response, then it is your responsibility to not go in that direction, because you know the kind of response that you might get. And people do this, if you think about it, right? Like they say, they start off with I don't want to come off as racist. They are automatically acknowledging that what they're going to say is going to be perceived in a certain way that's going to hurt the other person. The minute they say that, they're acknowledging it, right? Some people do that. Some people don't even give you a clue of what's about to come. I'll give you a perfect example.
Sorry. Like, I know a lot of white people, and I've never heard well-spoken versus polished, like those two synonyms. Before today, it would never have ever occurred to me, subconsciously or otherwise, that could even possibly be perceived as the wrong synonym. Like,
depending on who you're speaking to. Depending on who you're speaking to, who you're speaking about. That's where it gets tricky, right?
Again, for me personally, I don't see why it's tricky, or why I would even, like, it would literally never have ever occurred to me that you could use a wrong synonym like this. Like, I can understand if it was like a racially loaded term, but like, again, I know a lot of white people. I've never heard this talked about as well-spoken is not a racial term. That
it's not, but it's how it's perceived is what makes it so inflammatory.
So is it the wrong phrase, or is it the wrong interpretation of the phrase?
I'm not saying it's racist. I'm saying it's inflammatory. Like it brings up feelings and thoughts based on history and how Black people were perceived. That's what the words do.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I think this kind of goes back to what I was trying to say at the beginning, where it's the language of the situation and all, the factual details of the situation and what caused it. There's a difference between that and what it feels like to be in that situation. So, the fact of the matter is, someone thought you were well spoken and said it out loud, and that was all that was going through their head, I think.
Mm.
And that's just the fact of the situation. And then there's how the situation was interpreted and what it was like for you to be in that situation. And that's not how, and the way you interpreted that situation seems to be different from a sort of um, emotionless, factual presentation of the situation. Is that?
But you keep wanting to bring in logic when it's emotion involved. You can't. You can't.
I think what I'm trying to do is illustrate why these conversations are hard. Like I'm not trying to rationalize people's behavior, or I'm not trying to that was the point. That's why I did that, was to highlight the fact that yeah, it's you can try and talk logically, but when you do that, you miss the emotions a lot of times. It's like talking about, curing leukemia. We have to use science and reason, but that's just divorced from what is it like to actually experience that. I think that's what makes the conversations hard.
I'm looking at your cap. All right.
My cat?
Your cap. Your cap.
Oh.
Your cap. Your NASA cap. Right.
Yep.
That reminded me of something, and I'm going to put the facts to you, and you tell me how I should interpret what happened. Now, this is a true story. Right.
I don't know if my ego is that big, but
let's give it a shot.
All right.
All right. So, I love Legos. I love Lego kits, putting them together. Lego put out a special kit of all the women who have contributed to NASA, right? So it's a kit of three different presentations, for lack of a better term, and each of them have a woman who has significantly contributed to NASA's success in space exploration. So you have Grace Hopper. You know who Grace Hopper is, right?
My history on these people is not that great. I know the image of the woman who's standing next to her stack of papers, and she was the programmer. I know that image.
Right. She was one. Right. She's one of my Lego pieces. Right. And the Lego pieces is her in that classroom, with a little Lego piece of her, Kathleen, next to the stack. Is very cute. Right. And then there's the one of Grace Hopper. I think the mother of Hubble telescope. She was the one responsible for that. I think it's Grace Hopper. I think I have that name. And then on the third one are the two astronauts, Sally Ride, who was the first white female in space. And then you have Mae Jemison, the first Black woman in space. Okay. I put these things together so lovingly and sneakily at work, and I have them strategically placed on my desk. Right after I was moved to the back where no one can see me, and I was miserable, right? I came in one morning, and the two figures of Sally Ride and Mae Jemison were off their display, and they were laid. One was laid on top of the other in sort of a suggestive sexual position. So I came in. Now, mind you, there are 4 Lego pieces that are sitting on my desk in their various displays. Yet one person, and I won't say who, that particular person who I've worked very closely with has been disappointing to me, was the one who did that. Now, why would you not use Grace Hopper and the programmer and use them and put them on top of each other? No, you took Sally Ride and Mae Jemison. Mae Jemison is the only the Lego of color of all the 4 Legos, and put them on top of each other in a sexually suggestive position. Right? That's what I'm talking about. Like, you could come in and see that and look at that and just say, oh, well, he just took those 2 pieces because they were on the same display, and it was just easier, right? Me coming in, I'm seeing a whole bunch of stuff that's going through my head. Number one, you pick the two Lego pieces, one white, one black, put them in a sexually suggestive position, right? So are you like, what are you saying about me? Like, do you think I'm gay? Right? Like all of this is you're questioning my sexuality and my skin color all at the same time by doing just that childishness. Right. So it's those types of things that you experience. And I've just experienced it at the company that we work for. All right. I haven't experienced this anywhere else. Even when I was the only person of color in the room, I've never experienced that. I've only experienced it at this company. And I fell apart. Do you hear me? I fell apart. I burst out crying and I left for the day. And I didn't come back until 2 days later because every time I thought about it, I would burst into tears. And it was supposed to be a joke. A joke. And the thing is that I don't touch anybody else's desks because it's their desk. The only time I touch it is to leave work on it. But I don't I consider it a violation. I don't violate anybody else's desks for any reason, not even for a joke, because it's not funny. But this person took it upon themselves to do it to me. And you cannot help but feel some type of way about coming into work and seeing something like that on your desk. You can't. You can't. There's no way to divorce, or not divorce, but incorporate any type of reason or logic because of the visual of what's being represented overrides anything else. Any logic, any reason, any rationalization, gone. So that's why it's difficult. Even if the intent was not purposeful, it is still difficult to stop and say, okay, all right, let me not overreact. Let me not think this. It's just not possible. And through no amount of explanation could even make me feel better. And it still didn't. The person apologized, but I found the apology was empty because do you think you know me that well that you can violate my desk, number one, and do something like that and have me think of it as a joke? You don't know me very well. You know me within the context of workplace. You don't know me within the context of my home and what I respect and what I hold that's close to me. Women in STEM, I think that's the most kick-ass thing to see a woman performing in an area, science, math, of just kicking ass like the men. They're my heroes. So you have that violation on top of it. I didn't buy that Lego set for shits and giggles. I bought that Lego set because I think those women are awesome. They broke barriers. They helped put people on a satellite globe. And you did that.
And these Lego figures are representing all that to you. And so when he put the Lego pieces that way, it's not just unprofessional. It's not just a violation of personal space. It feels to you like that's an attack on everything else it means to you.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. So, I hope I answered, some of your question with that, because it's just, people just take liberties. And
Well, our experiences of the world are so different, I'm just trying to get a sense of what it's like to be you now, I'm just asking these questions, but
there are times that I just wish I could just work from home all the time, just to avoid people. But I see the damage in that as well, because I can't just hole up in my apartment, afraid to engage because I don't want to get hurt. That's silly. That's stupid. And it's also thinking that everybody out there is like these numbskulls who do this dumb shit. No. I got to get out there. I enjoy being out there and engaged. And sometimes you meet random people and you have the most wonderful and interesting conversations and perspectives. Sometimes you talk to older people, they give you historic perspectives, and you find out about things that you just think that are just so awesome about this world. And the things that we do that can be great and wonderful.
We've been going for a long time because this is a good conversation. Time has gone by fast. What are you hopeful about? Like, is there anything about the world and about culture that gives you hope and optimism at all? Is there anything?
Yeah. Social media can be good and bad. But I was never more appreciative of social media when I saw the protests that were going on around the world. I was speechless. I started crying because to see so many people understand and come together, different races, religions, just say we're all angry. It was unacceptable what happened, and we're all angry about it, and we're all going to show our support. I said, my God, there is hope for the human race. I saw that. It was wonderful to see. And they were peaceful. And there was solidarity. And people came out. I never thought I would see something like that, ever, in support of something like that around the world. It was wonderful to see. And when I see something like that, I think there's hope for us. We just got to get it together. But there's hope. It's out there. It is. So that's why I don't live as though everybody is an asshole. Because it's not true. And people can change if they want. And I think that's what's happening now. People are changing. They're realizing what's really important, and they're fighting for it. And I hope they continue to fight for it because it's needed. It's necessary. Otherwise, there's no hope. If people don't continue to fight, we're done for. And we might as well all just load up, strap up, and start shooting. And just hopefully you're the last man standing. I don't want it to get like that. Because you miss out on a lot of great people who can bring so much joy into your life. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think dialogue and just having these conversations is just it should be our first option, our first resort. Was there ever a case, actually, a question popped into my head for you. Was there ever a case where you experienced hurt but then experienced healing afterwards?
It took time. Of course, there have been, I don't think there's one person out there who haven't had situations in which they're knocked down and they feel as though they didn't get it, or they are they're not worthy. And I've had that situation happen, and it was right after my divorce. I felt like a failure, and something happened. A whole bunch of things after the divorce accumulated into a situation that brought out the very, very worst in me, a person that I didn't know existed. And the humiliation of the situation afterwards And for nearly 2 weeks, I just stayed in my room. The only thing that was lighting up the room was the TV. And I just sat there and just worked it all out. And I said, you know what? This too shall pass. This is going to take longer to recover from, but I will recover from it. And I'll be wiser, and I will be more vigilant in how I operate within this life, not to make the same mistakes, to learn from this mistake and not to make it again because of the consequences. That shit hurt. It hurt bad. And I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to feel that hurt. I want to run away from it. So give myself time to heal. And that's what I always say. Whenever something really catastrophic happens and I can't stop thinking about it and it's on my head from the moment I wake up to the time I go to sleep, the one comforting thought that I have is that this pain, this anger, or whatever it is not going to last forever. And I need to allow time to do its thing to heal me, so that I can function again the way I used to before this thing occurred. And that's what comforts me, that I know that I have a quicker healing time now. The older I get, the more I learn, the quicker my healing time is. Before, it would take weeks. Now I know that within 7 days, whatever that has been done to me, I'll be over it. I'll stop thinking about it and I'll just move on. And that's exactly what's been happening. So I think working on that, getting older, is what happened, is how it helps. It helps with the recovery time and the healing and looking at things more clear-headedly and looking back and saying, you know what? I shouldn't have done that, because maybe if I hadn't done that, then that wouldn't have happened. So I always use each experience as a learning. A way to learn from it and to say, okay, all right, I did the best I could in that situation. I couldn't have done it any different. Or, yeah, okay, if I hadn't done this, maybe that wouldn't have happened. And you get that the older you get. That comes to you quicker. When you're young and impetuous, fuck you. But the older you get, you start.
This is reminding me of there's an Old Testament concept. The word holiness. It's actually it sounds, I forget, you're the linguist here, but it sounds a lot like the word whole. And that's actually not an accident.
Holistic? Is that what you mean, holistically?
Whole, yeah. Like holiness and holistic or whole, or
okay.
That's actually not an accident. It's actually it's the same way in Hebrew and all the Romance languages and Latin. And so this connection between my own virtue and then my ability to be whole as a person was connected in the Old Testament, and kind of what you were saying for some reason rung that bell for me.
What specifically?
Well, just the idea that my own my own personal pursuit of goodness and my own pursuit of the good, that there's this sort of concept of ritual holiness, right? In let's say Judaism, where if you commit a sin and you go get yourself cleansed by whatever process procedure they have in the text, and there's this concept of ritual holiness, but they tie that with the concept of being whole, as in not being a broken person.
Okay, I got you.
And so there's this connection between moral virtue and my pursuit of the good and my pursuit of goodness, which is tied to me overcoming brokenness.
Okay.
And I think some of what you were saying would kind of ring that bell, where these dots are they seem connected.
They are.
Sorry, that was a lot to throw at you. So.
No, it's just, I never really, am I a whole person? And because, I've had a lot of stuff happen to me, typical Scorpio, a whole bunch of drama, a lot of setbacks, but each time I'm reminded that with each setback, I rebounded and came back stronger. And now I guess we all have this pursuit of happiness. And then we think that once we do have that happiness, we're a whole person. But you know what? I've discovered, and this is just recently, that you can be just content, just to float along, and don't necessarily have to be happy in order to feel like a whole person, if that makes sense. Like happiness doesn't have to be in the equation in order for you to be a whole person. I think as long as you can float and navigate through this world and finding little bits of joys and pleasures, you don't always have to be happy. But if you can just grab onto those and let them sort of, make you a better person or more connected person, I think that's the better course of action, more than anything else in this life, because we're never going to get it right. We're still learning. We're constantly navigating this world. Even the older people, they've experienced a lot of shit, but they don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. Going back to, who's it, Socrates? I know that I know nothing. Right? I think we all should navigate with that. I know that I know nothing. And just go from there, instead of getting in everybody's face and saying, I know what I know. No, I know what I know up to this point, but there's a lot of the unknown. And I may not know everything, but if I can take what I know now and be a better person with it and don't harm or take somebody else's liberty away from them, then it's all good. All good.
Sounds like some words of wisdom from a perfectly polished professor. Love it.
Oh, you know what? I've just about had enough of you and that polished. I think it's because Polish. If you switch the vowel, it's Polish.
I think subconsciously I'm Polish. Like, I took a DNA test. I am 100% Eastern European, if you couldn't tell by the nose. But
no, I see now here. See, I didn't go there. You know why? Because that would be what? That would be what? If I did that, if I said by your nose, I automatically know that you're Eastern European. That would be wrong, wouldn't it? That's why I don't do it.
Well, you would be right, though.
I would be right, but I'd be wrong using your nose to characterize an entire nationality.
Nah, I don't care. You can do that to me. You have my express written permission.
Oh, God, you are the hip, woke millennial. My bad.
Me?
My bad. Which nothing.
I'm not woke. I had to pound an energy drink right before this.
Y'all don't have any buttons to press, right? I can't press any buttons and piss you millennials off because everything is good. Everything is great. Oh, don't worry. When you get older, we'll see how long that lasts.
Looking forward to it. Bring it on. All right. All right. Well, hey, I think I'm gonna hit the stop recording button pretty soon. But it's been great talking. Thanks so much for coming on and doing this.
I don't think we really touched on anything. I kind of like had it in my head that we were going like go full in with philosophy, but we didn't. We kind of went like
it took its own course. The river started going one way and we rolled with it. I thought we'd get more philosophical too, to be honest, but
the engineer in you. See, this is what I'm talking about. This right here. That all of that. That's what I mean. Yep. Engineers, complicated every time. It could have been just like you could have had a talking point, and then we could have just went off from there. But you just.
Well, next time we could do another one where we just strictly limit ourselves to all the philosophy.
And you'll argue with me and not try to do the Socratic method, dialectic thing, and we just like let's get ready to rumble.
Yep.
Yeah.
We could butt heads. I'll bring a antler hat or something.
Woo! That's what I'm talking about.
All right, I'm looking forward to that one.
All right, cool. You set it up. I'll be there.
Hey, sounds good.
All right.